I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
The top business stories live from the Sky Newsroom. Breaking news this hour, Apple pulls its iPhone cloud encryption feature in the UK, following a data privacy row with the government. A surprise boost for retailers as food sales see the biggest jump since the start of the pandemic. Plus, sabotage why the Scotch whisky industry is in up arms over plans to label English whisky a single malt. Very good afternoon on this Friday, Business Live with me, Darren McCaffrey. I'm going to start with that breaking news, and that is that Apple will no longer offer its advanced data protection tool to UK customers. That follows a data privacy row with the UK government. Currently, only account holders can see things like photos or documents that have been stored online, but the UK government requested the right to see that data earlier this month. In response, Apple has now removed the tool. Well, let's speak to Professor Alan Woodward, cybersecurity expert at Surrey University. I suppose the first question is, in your breadth of knowledge of this and a bit of context, how significant is this move by Apple today?
That's extremely significant. It's disappointing as well, particularly for UK users. What I think Apple is sending a very strong message here, which is that whereas the UK government asked them to remove this feature globally, what they've said is, if you want to do this for your people, as in UK users, then reluctantly and with great disappointment we'll do it, but we're certainly not going to do it globally. So actually, the only thing that the UK government have achieved in all of this is to disadvantage the UK users. They've made that corner of the internet less secure for us. And I think that Apple also, in sending this message, they've said, well, yeah, the UK is not a huge market for us. So, it's not that we're going to be dictated to by the UK government.
So then why have Apple done this?
Well, they've done it because the UK government served them, I think, a TCN notice under the Investigatory Powers Act, telling them to remove it. But in some ways, I think Apple are doing this. They've done it because they're making real something that a number of the large tech companies have said, which is that if the UK government insists on things like removing end-to-end encryption, then they will simply withdraw from the UK market. And that's what Apple are doing here. They're just removing this from the UK market. So the only people to suffer are the UK users.
And so this is what's called an advanced data protection. Just explain, what is that? I mean, I've got an iPhone. Mm-hmm. I haven't opted into that, I don't think. So does this affect me? Is this something that you have to opt into and that's been taken away? Or does every iPhone user or Apple user have this tool on their device?
No, you're correct to point out that it's an opt-in service. And what it does is effectively, it means that only the user can then read any data they put in the iCloud, so documents, phones, backups of their iMessages and SMS messages, etc. But you do have to opt into it. But what Apple are saying is that from today, as I understand it, you can no longer opt into it. And anybody that has opted into it, they will slowly remove the service from those people as well.
And what's the UK government trying to achieve here? Is this, would they say this is a security issue? It's about criminality? Why have the UK government insisted that they need to have access?
Well, I can understand the sentiment, because what they're saying is they don't want any safe place for criminals to hide. If they're pursuing criminals, terrorists, whatever it might be, they want to be able to get at the data. But they have the powers currently. If they really want to prosecute someone, they can seize the phone. They can try and get the data off the phone. What they're doing here is effectively a feature that Apple users had said they wanted, which is we want it set up so that only we can read the data. We don't want the ability for Apple, if compelled to do so, to read our data. They're basically saying, yeah, okay, we'll put in a feature where only you can read it. And the government is saying, no, you've got to take a step backwards and remove that option for UK users.
OK, fascinating stuff, Professor Allen there, in the sense that I suspect this is going to be a battle that we're going to see play out quite a lot between big tech companies and governments, not just here in the UK, but around the world in the months and years to come. Thank you very much indeed for that, Professor Alan Woodward there from Surrey University. Let's turn to the economy now, because there's been a raft of data out today shining a light on factors from retail sales to consumer confidence. Those retail sales did see a surprise jump, but another survey is showing that UK businesses have been slashing jobs at the fastest rate in more than 4 years, with the upcoming budgets potentially intensifying those pace of cuts. That's according to a new survey. Let's have a look at those stats, though, from ONS. Retail sales rose 1.7% in January, month on month. It's the first growth since August and follows a fall of 0.6% in the key shopping month of December. Now, the biggest rise was in food shopping. Their sales were up 5.6%, the greatest amount since March 2020, when, of course, we all went into lockdown. Let's get more on this with Paul Dales, Chief UK Economist at Capital Economics. Paul, good afternoon to you. Fascinating, isn't it? On the surface, these retail sales are pretty good, particularly for the supermarkets.
Yes, that's exactly right. It essentially says that a lot of people spent a lot of money in the supermarkets in January. And normally we would assume that that is going to be a big boost for the whole economy. But actually, it's been reported that people spent a lot in the supermarkets because they weren't spending a lot in restaurants. So people were eating at home instead of eating out. So it's a gain for supermarkets, but probably a loss for restaurants. And the net boost to the economy will be smaller than the figures suggest at first sight.
Yeah, it is indeed. You get that sense, don't you? I mean, January, the weather was pretty awful in most parts of the UK. People maybe deciding to eat at home, not good, as you say, for bars and restaurants. And it's not been great for clothing retailers either. I mean, yet again, sales are down. They had a pretty terrible Christmas and no great start to 2025.
Well, this is all linked to the underlying economic drivers. We know that businesses are facing higher taxes and are going to have to pay more for the staff that are on minimum wage, and that's coming in from April. And as a result of that, they're cutting back on employment. Households know this. They can see it. They realise the economic outlook is not quite as strong, so they're paring back their spending, and that's happening by, instead of going out for dinner, eating at home, which is usually cheaper, and instead of buying new clothes, just wearing the old ones for a little bit longer.
Yeah, indeed. And there's also concern, isn't there? You alluded to it there about the wider state of the economy. We're hearing today about the fact that companies are getting rid of some employees, certainly not recruiting others, that the job market is becoming stickier and stickier, if you like.
Yes, I think this is going to be a key driver of the economy over the next 6 months. So over the last 6 months, the economy hasn't grown at all. Essentially, it's been very disappointing. I think we've got another 6 months of that ahead of us. I do think it could get a bit better thereafter. But the essential point that you're making is that employment is at best moving sideways at the moment. And I wouldn't be surprised if it were to fall a bit over the coming months. And that just means that businesses aren't in the mood to spend. It means households won't be in the mood to spend either. Now, the silver lining here is that probably does mean that inflation will eventually be dragged back down to the 2% target as opposed to 3% right now, and interest rates can be cut. But the benefits from that won't happen for a while.
OK, really appreciate your time this afternoon. Paul Dales there, the Chief UK Economist at Capital Economics. And we should reflect that also the government notched up a record surplus in January, £15 billion, the highest since 1993, but below the expectations of the OBR, and a further sign that the government is having to borrow more money. Let's talk about Germany now, because voters are going to the polls this weekend for an election which has been described as one of the most important for decades. Chancellor Olaf Scholz and his government face being voted out of office following a campaign that has been dominated by Ukraine, energy prices and immigration. Let's speak to Carsten Dunas, who is chief economist at the sustainable asset management firm and is with us. Very good afternoon to you. We reflected there, I tried to, listening to some of the commentary coming from Germany, that actually the economy hasn't featured as much as it possibly should have done. Lots of focus on migration, but given the trouble the German economy is in, it's not necessarily been front and centre as you would expect in normal times.
You're absolutely right. We have lots of problems right now to discuss. Economics is only one of them, but still it has been an interesting campaign. So usually they are, or during the Merkel years, we had quite dull campaigns as everyone kind of likes things as they are. Now there's a sense of urgency that things need to change. So voters are really undecided. I think the latest poll was 28% of voters are still undecided. People are watching all these talk shows. People really want to know what all these parties are standing for, what their concepts are, because everyone knows things have to change in Germany.
They do seem to have to change. I think everyone agrees with that. Friedrich Merz, I think, is the likely next chancellor. Could take a long time, couldn't it, with those coalition negotiations, depending on the result in Sunday. My big question is, what is his solution? What do the CDU see as the panacea to Germany's economic woes?
If we just had a panacea. So he's definitely more market-friendly than most of the, or actually, yes, the Social Democrats and the Greens that are still in power. And most economists would say that is also the medicine that we need currently. He's still centrist in a way, so he will be able to govern either with the Greens or with the Social Democrats. He could even govern with the Liberals. That's all an option. In the end, I think that's a good thing from this campaign. It's not that polarized. All these parties still talk to each other, with the exception maybe of the extreme right.
OK, Carsten, we're going to have to leave there, I'm afraid, but we will await those results on Sunday evening. Coverage here, of course, on Sky News. Thank you very much for your time. OK, let's bring you an update. You may well have seen it on the side panel on your screen there on the Pope's health. His medical team currently giving a press conference in Rome. We're hearing that they are saying that Pope Francis is not out of danger just yet, but is in good spirits. Let's bring in Lisa Holland, who is live for us in Rome. What have his doctors been saying, Lisa?
Well, if the world's more than 1 billion Catholics were hoping for some kind of concrete reassurance from the Pope's medical team this afternoon, I'm afraid it hasn't been given. The information that we're getting from the doctors who are speaking inside the Gemelli Hospital right now is that they are saying that the Pope is not out of danger. You may know that he was brought here to the Gemelli Hospital a week ago. Now, the doctors are saying that they are giving a news conference to mark the fact that he has been in hospital for a week. There has been an intense amount of speculation, given that there's been very little information that has come from either the doctors themselves or the Vatican about the Pope's health. They are underlining the fact that he is an already fragile 88-year-old man. They are saying that the treatment for his double pneumonia, which he was diagnosed with on Tuesday just gone, is never easy. They're saying currently he's not at risk of dying, in their words, and that he prayed for 20 minutes today. However, of course, people will be very concerned that they haven't managed to give this reassurance that he is not out of danger. Remember that he was brought in here with bronchitis exactly a week ago. Then his condition deteriorated. Throughout the course of the week, we've been given little bits of information that he's been eating, which of course is always a good sign in a patient so seriously ill. But of course that bronchitis did deteriorate into pneumonia. We know he's been reading. He's had visitors. We know that he was visited by the Italian Prime Minister earlier in the week, who remarked on his good spirits and his good humour, something which has been underlined again by the doctors. But essentially they are saying still they are deeply concerned about his condition.
OK, Lisa, thank you very much indeed for that. Lisa Holland there with that update on the Pope's condition live from Rome this afternoon. That press conference carrying on. We'll bring you any further updates when we get them. You're watching No Business Live here on Sky News. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, why the Scotch whisky industry is up in arms about plans to label English whisky a single malt. We'll be explaining all after this quick break. Stay tuned.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash.
Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes. Sky News, the full story first. I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
This is insane. This was a bustling residential area.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
How difficult is this to police tonight? Off the scale.
I'm Dan Whitehead, Sky News' West of England and Wales correspondent.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. As a team, we've interviewed some of the biggest stars in the world, the likes of Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Sir Elton John. We try to give you an honest sense of how these people really are.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers. We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people.
Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised.
If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over.
People here believe the water will be this deep for weeks. I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away?
Sky News, the full story first.
This is the game changer seat.
Look, it even comes with binoculars. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Welcome back. There is a bit of a row distilling in the whisky world today. Westminster MPs have been discussing whether English whisky can be labelled as single malt. That's provoked anger in Scotland, with one SNP MP calling it sabotage of Scotland's biggest export. Well, this morning I spoke to Morag Garden, Chief Executive of English Whisky Guilds. Have a listen.
For English whisky, a GI is crucial because it's going to ensure that quality, authenticity and market differentiation. So it's creating those common standards for English whisky, which is going to be that quality mark for consumers, but it's also going to be recognised across the globe in other countries. And we definitely want to work with the Department of Business and Trade and really use this legal status that we're going to gain later in the year to boost sales.
Well, for the sake of balance, this afternoon, I've spoken to Mark Kent. He's Chief Executive of the Scottish Whisky Association, and he essentially answered the question about why he opposed that move.
Well, I mean, what we're focused on is protecting the single malt category. 99% of single malt whisky in the UK comes from Scotland. 93% of all single malt trade internationally is Scotch. And this accounts for £1.7 billion a year, so it's very important. Now, single malt means that the spirit is produced in one location, a single location. So if you've ever been to a distillery, and we've got a lot of tourists come along, you'll go through the process. First of all, the malted barley comes in, it's put in a mash, you'll see the mash tubs, it's then put into fermentation, and then it's distilled. Now, what this proposal does is cut out the first part of this and only focuses on the fact that the distillation should take place in the distillery, which really is not consistent with the traditional meaning of single malt that has been built up by the Scotch whisky industry over many decades.
And why then do you think, I suppose, the growing whisky industry in England is trying to change things?
Well, I mean, first of all, let's be clear. There's a lot of whiskies out there from England and elsewhere in the world that are very good, just like Scotch. So everybody should be free to develop and market their whisky in the right way. But what we're saying is this particular proposal runs on the back of reputation of single malt specifically. And that's going to be confusing to consumers who are used to the standards of single malt which come from Scotch.
So you kind of feel that the lines, if you like, the goalposts are being moved. Is that really fundamentally what you're trying to get at here?
Yes. So, when you go into a supermarket, say in England, and you have two bottles of single malt next to them, an English and a Scotch, you want to know that they both follow the same process. And at the moment, it's not very clear where the single part of the single malt proposal in the English whisky definition comes from, because there's only one step that's being done in that. And that's really important for the sense of community, for the sense of place, which is so fundamental to single malt as we see it, and so many tourists who come to distilleries to see the whole process take part in one place.
But Mark, I suppose, and I say this as someone who is a consumer, and I also say it as someone who's been to quite a few Scottish distilleries in my time, that in the end, though, if I'm in the supermarket, what am I looking at? I'm looking at the label, effectively, the brand name, if you like, which is tied often to a location. But I think for lots of consumers is they want a Scotch whisky. It doesn't really matter about whether it's a single malt or not. It's more that it's Scottish. And so aren't you getting a little bit het up in the definition of a single malt when actually much of the sales is driven by the very fact that it's just associated with Scotland, particularly internationally?
So I agree and I disagree. The part I agree on is that there's a great variety of great whiskies in Scotland, all sorts of different parts, and that people have built this reputation, distillers have built this reputation up over a long period of time. That's why people like Scotch. Equally, people may want to try a different whiskey. They may want to try an English whiskey. They may want to try a Japanese whiskey, a US whiskey. What's important is the terminology is clear to them, so that we have one standard which is applicable, in this case, both to an English single malt and a Scotch single malt, and that they know that they've got that guarantee of place and that guarantee of quality.
Just very finally, is one of your concerns, though, about protecting this market? Because it's not necessarily in the rudest of health. Is that fair to say? I'm reading that Scottish whiskey exports fell 3.7%, I think, last year. Single malts down 17%. What's going wrong? I mean, it's one of Britain's greatest exports. Why the impact recently?
You're absolutely right. It's a great product. It's our biggest food and drink export in the UK, and the long-term potential is there if we get the right support at home. We're not helped at the moment by a turbulent international situation, cost of living crisis and people tightening their belts in some countries, nor by the domestic situation, which especially for some of our smaller members, they're being hit with increased regulation, things like extended producer responsibility, which is not clear, increased excise duty, which is 14% rise in the past few months. So what we need to do is ensure that we've got the best conditions to go out and export this great product all around the world, and that includes protecting the well-built and the well-established reputation of single malt.
OK, Mark, thank you very much. I should say what's tickled me today is that the head of the English Whisky Guild is called Morag and is Scottish, and that the head of the Scottish Whisky Association, I think it's fair to say, is called Mark and is English. So there you go.
That's right, and hopefully we appreciate each other's industries, and we're going to find a way to get this sorted out which protects single malt Scotch reputation.
There you go, the row over whiskey here in the United Kingdom. That is it from me on Business Live for today. Back on Monday, of course, at 11:30. Up next, it is the News Hour with Kamali with the very latest on the Pope's health, likely to stay in hospital until next week. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. Bye-bye.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
Free, wherever you get your news. The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. I'm Martha Kellner, and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.